Q&A session. I'm so glad you're back. I really hope you've enjoyed the 2 videos I've done on the day-to-day life as a sewist. On YouTube, it's 2 parts. On Instagram, it's 3 parts. I split part 2 into 2. I felt like the videos were a bit long. I was so shocked when I was editing, but it seems getting footage for you guys means longer videos. I really hope you've enjoyed them and they were informative about Notify, about Africrea, about pop-up shop, and also my website and everything else I spoke about. So welcome to the Q&A session, and now we begin. Next, I shop for my supplies depending on the project I'm doing, whether it's for a client or a personal project. So there are very many various shops I shop at, and then there are some standard ones because there are things you always need. You always need zips and thread and such things. So some of those things you always shop at the same place. And then there are some when you're looking for a unique fabric, there are shops that I shop at. I don't want to make this video long by saying all the shops, but most shops with sewing accessories, those are the threads, the zips, the needles, the threads and all that, are River Road, Biashara Street. Fabrics are Nairobi Textiles, some River Road, some Westlands, various places. I have imported some sewing supplies, especially like my corsetry things, because they're not locally available. So yeah, so it's a mix of various things, but I do get my supplies locally. I've not yet reached that fancy place of having my own fabrics printed. Yeah, so I hope that helps you with that specific question. Yes, this question tends to be very controversial because it tends to be the reason why most parents do not support their kids doing fashion. Fashion designers make money in various ways. You can make money in fashion in various ways. It really depends on your business model. Are you in mass production? Are you in ready to wear? And the truth is, all businesses take time. And I think the problem is people don't want to be patient with fashion businesses. You want it to have a turnover now. So yes, you can make money and live off of fashion. You have to be very strategic and you have to think long term, and it can take time to get there. So there is no real flat rate of this is what designers make, unless you've been hired by a specific fashion house and you're just the designer there. I can just say that there's a lot of work designers have to do because our industry hasn't yet fully developed into a structure where you can only design and someone else does the production and all that. You can actually put those systems in place and outsource your production and everything like that, but for now we do majority of the work, so it takes a while to basically set things up. So you can make money from fashion. To start a fashion business, you can actually start with zero. Okay, zero is relative, or with a lot of money. Again, it depends on your business model. The reason why I say you can start with zero is because most times when you're starting out, like the way I started out, I started with made to measure, where I was making specific clothes for clients, and I required a deposit so that I could be able to buy the materials and everything that I needed. On the other hand, it's not 100% zero because I had a machine and a few other things, which is usually wise. If you're going to fashion school, it's important to have a machine so that you can do your projects. You can also just decide to outsource labor if you don't have a machine and pay a tailor a certain amount, and you just start your business and grow it. So the reason why there are very many people in the fashion industry in the first place, especially tailors and designers, so to speak, is because the barriers to entry are very few, which is why the market is flooded. So which is why it's also very difficult for you to know who is good and who is not. So now you know why. How you get good tailors? That is a question probably every fashion business owner is asking themselves. Personally, they have hired tailors in the past. apart from outsourcing, I tend to do it like an apprenticeship. I'd rather teach a tailor from scratch than get an experienced tailor sometimes, because it's very hard to teach someone to unlearn a lot of the things they have done, especially if it's a very experienced tailor. So sometimes I'll get a tailor who maybe has 1-2 year experience and then train them in how I like things done. Or I just teach someone from scratch. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of resources. It can be expensive, especially because there are people who have a habit of poaching tailors. Personally, I'm not those kind of people who hold on to tailors and believe they'll be with me forever. Life happens, life goes on, but that's just how I prefer to work. So I also know how to sew myself, so it's not usually the end of the world for me if a tailor leaves, but I do try and make sure that they are paid fairly and treated well. That's generally the best way even to maintain anyone who works for you in the long term. Tailors may not meet deadlines because most of the time they are not really trained in customer service experience or customer service in general. So sometimes they will take orders more than they can manage and completely underestimate the time they're taking, or also completely underestimate the design they are doing. So that's why you'll find that there are a lot of issues with the design or issues with how they manage their time, even if they're well skilled. A tip for those of you who like going to tailors because you want to skip all the designers is ensure that you give the tailor work that they are actually good at doing, which is very difficult for most people to do because it needs you to work with a tailor for a very long time to know what kind of work. I know which tailor I take shirts to, I know which tailor I take jackets to, I know which tailor I take dresses to. It's a lie if they tell you they can do everything. They can't. I can sew, and I even went to fashion school for it, and I can't sew everything well. I know the strengths and weaknesses, so do not believe anybody who says they can sew everything well. It's a bit obvious when you can see the work they do very well and the work they don't do very well. So getting images from the internet and giving it to a tailor to do just because they did one thing well is usually a mistake. You really have to know their skill level. The fabrics I started with were basically cotton based fabrics, because basically in fashion school when you're learning how to do the samples, you do small samples for things like a collar or a sleeve, or basically when you're just learning how to sew basic clothes, you always use something cotton based. There was a fabric called ginger. I think it's still there but not as easily available as before. I don't support this thing where I've seen tailors being trained with paper. I don't understand that logic, because learning a fabric and learning how clothes work is being able to wear what you've made. Because in school, you made clothes for yourself. That was a very good way of knowing how to adjust clothes and basically like that. So yes, I started with cotton based fabrics, plain fabrics mostly, which is basically how it should be. Do not use slippery fabrics like chiffon and satin, and it will drive you crazy. Just use the cheapest fabric that's cotton that you could get. Even Tetron works. So it's just that Tetron is lightweight, but use cotton. Where to study fashion in Kenya depends on your goals. Are you starting a fashion brand because you like fashion? Are you using fashion as a way of expressing yourself as an art and all that? There are very many factors that will determine which school you go to. So there are very many schools in Kenya. Listing them here also just means taking forever. There are people who can do a degree at Kenyatta University, Nairobi University. Amongst those two, I'd advise for Nairobi University. I think they have a better curriculum. Colleges, for me, I feel like colleges get straight to the point in terms of teaching you fashion. I would recommend Mackenzie, and the school I went to is Vera. I don't know if I can vouch for some schools. I guess it's actually just a personal preference and what your goals are. If you just want to learn how to sew, you can even do an apprenticeship and learn how to sew. But if you really want to do fashion, there are schools you can go to. It's important that you check what they are offering. Are you looking for international certification, local certification? Because there are also people who offer the local certificate, which is NITA. I'll write what NITA means at the bottom because right now I don't remember and I'm recording. Yes, so those are the options. Studying fashion is important, but it is not compulsory, because for me as a designer, I would say it's more important to know how to sew, because I also know people who have studied fashion who don't know how to sew. The reason why I say it's important to know how to sew is because there are elements of clothing construction that you can only understand and can only be able to give instructions even to a tailor you've hired if you know how to sew. There are limitations you have if you don't know how to sew. So unless you just get a very talented tailor, and personally I don't know if it's really wise to keep all your faith in someone who's not necessarily a permanent part of your business. So learn how to sew. Studying fashion is even an extra bonus. You can never ever take for granted the networks you make in fashion school and the people you meet. It's usually just more than learning the skill, it's also about networking. I won't dwell so much on this because I'm going to do a whole video on sizing just before Black Friday to help you shop online. So I know designers have issues with sizing and people have issues with sizing, so I'm going to do a whole sizing video. But in a nutshell, it takes a lot of research and you need to know your target market. That is the main thing. So to learn more, watch the video on sizing. It's going to come up in November, so watch out for it. Yes, there is a rumor going around that designers don't wear their own creations, their own clothes. I do. Actually, for me, it's personally very hard for me to design things that I wouldn't personally wear. It's very hard. So you'll find that the things I know how to make very well, even for other people, are things that I wear myself, because for me, making clothes for myself means learning more about the body and learning about fitting, and also taking my creativity to another level. Every year I give away all my clothes that I can make new ones. So for me, that's basically how I've done it, through and through. I still keep some clothes that I really like, but I do give majority of the everyday clothes away every year. Yeah. As I mentioned in part 2 of my day-to-day life as a designer, yes, I do maintain my own website, just to get that off. The reason I work with Tiki Designs to do my web design is because they have a very good way of making sure the template they give me to use is simple and straightforward to basically use. So I can be able to maintain my own website. Like if I want to change, like if something, so I sold something and I need to replace it back, I can be able to do that without having to call. So I like that, and I've not had any incidents or issues with Habloy for hosting my website, because if you don't know something about website, it's supposed to be a secure place, even payment wise and all that. So I've not had any issues, I've not had any glitches, I've not had anyone trying to hack. So it's important to check some of those things when you're having a website. And yes, my website it's possible to purchase things from it. That's also something I worked on this year. Yes, I do my own photography and my own videography, and it's not because I don't support people who do that professionally, but for me at the moment it's strictly from a financial point. And also another reason why I invested in a camera is because I wanted to document my work. I didn't think it was going to progress to this level, but once in a while I do work with photographers, videographers, makeup artists, and I do a whole shoot and everything. Sometimes we have a different agreement outside of money on how we are going to work together. Sometimes a collaboration, a creative collaboration. Very many ways of negotiating, but of course you have to have a relationship with the people you're working with. And yeah, so for now, that's the way I've decided to go, but definitely support. They're amazing. There's amazing talent in this country, so something to check out. I cannot stress enough how important it is to keep records. I know sometimes people treat fashion as a hobby and fashion business as a hobby, but it can really add up. Considering some of us, me, who are very much addicted to buying fabric, it's important to keep records so that you can keep track of your money. I do have an accountant I consult with. He's called Jeremiah from Prolific Business Consultancy. So basically, I consult on him for my taxes. He does my tax returns, and I will link the website just so that he's very amazing. He's very trustworthy. He keeps deadlines. You don't have to worry about him, and he can also advise you on various things, money related. I have a bank account that is separate from my personal account, and I have an M-Pesa till number. For people who are outside of Kenya, M-Pesa is mobile money based here in Kenya. And I also have PayPal business for international transactions. So the more I progress, the more I keep adding to just making customer experience as smooth as possible. So I wanted to point that out as well. So this is the last question. It's about shipping. Locally, I use G4S and Wells Fargo, who do next day delivery all over the country. What I like about them is that they have flat rates depending on how far they are going into the country. So I know the whole of Nairobi is covered by this much. If I'm sending it to a place that's this many kilometers away from Nairobi, it will be this much. That's what I like about them. I don't know if they have business accounts for people. It would be very nice if they do. They really helped me out a lot when I was selling masks in 2020. It was very helpful. Another thing I like about them is that their customer experience is very good, and they have a very wide network all over the country, which some companies don't have yet. I also use Uber, their package service. And internationally, as I mentioned in the day-to-day life videos, I use DHL. I have a DHL account for Myanmar Creations, and then I have the Africa DHL account. And I just look at the delivery of the service. It's very important because I do not like customers complaining about that. It just gives me peace of mind. So I would highly recommend that you use those companies and still support people who are coming up, because you never know. Finally, this is the end. I am going to be doing design process videos in November. So basically things like pattern drafting, sizing, basically what I do to show from the sketch to the garment construction. So that's what I'll be doing in November. Looking forward to seeing you there. Thank you for the support. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Thank you for the new followers on Instagram. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for sharing. Looking forward to seeing you in November, even as I continue to churn out these videos, and I know my editing will improve. So I'm looking forward to that as well. Thank you, and bye-bye.